How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I have got a very special guest for you. I actually last spoke to this guy back in episodes 51 and 80. They're the most popular episodes I've put out there. Today, I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend that is Dr. Mike Israetel. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing very well. It's an honor and a privilege to be back on with you.
That's it. Third time. It's becoming a bit of a regular occurrence. So obviously, been a while since we last spoke, and over the last year or so, it's been quite crazy for everybody. But how have you been? What have you been up to? What's been happening in your world?
Well, yeah, great questions. I work mostly over the internet, so not a whole lot has changed for me. I really don't like to see the world in disarray, so it's been unfortunate from that perspective. But my daily routine hasn't changed much. I've competed in bodybuilding pretty successfully since we last spoke, and I'm training really hard. And I guess a big difference is now we're running the RP YouTube channel pretty hard, and we're up to like 235,000 subscribers or something like that. So YouTube's growing fast, and I really like that because it's another medium by which to get some good information out to some people about how to do things semi-intelligently in trying to get jacked and lean. So that's kind of my deal. Yeah.
Nice.
How about you?
So over in the UK, I'm not sure how, because over in the US, the different states have different closures on gyms, whereas
yes.
Over here, the gyms have been open now for the last 4-5 months, so things have been getting back up and running. I competed in my first powerlifting competition for a year and a half, which is crazy to think about. So qualified for the British, so I've got that coming up in a couple of months.
Very cool.
Just good to see that things are getting back to normal. How was that with your bodybuilding shows and the training building up to that? Was that affected with gym closures, or were you pretty consistent in terms of the gyms being open where you're at?
Oh no, yeah, I was in Philadelphia, and the gyms full on closed for a few months actually, and we had to do what it took to train at home, really, and with a few other friends on the sly, and we got the training in. It wasn't great training. It was fine training. It did what it was supposed to, but nothing more. And actually, because I couldn't use any back machines, I had to bend over for all my rows, and I actually had an injury that just healed a little while back, but it bothered me for a long time. An injury to my adductor, because like the adductors are used to stabilize your body in a bent over position. And I normally wouldn't do that much bent over rowing, but I was training back 2-3 times a week, tons of bent over rows of various kinds, because there's no back machines available. All the gyms are closed. So that was a bit annoying. That training got finished, and then myself and my wife, and actually my friend Jared and we moved to Las Vegas because my wife had a special appointment there as a medical doctor for a year. And when we got to Las Vegas, gyms were already open there, so that was really good. And then their mask mandates were still in effect for quite some time, and that was interesting. Training with a mask was definitely something to get used to. It wasn't terribly difficult. I got used to it in a while. But when the mask came off, I was very, very happy. I didn't have to gasp and wheeze between sets of legs anymore, or as much as I was. Yeah, I actually got COVID during my bodybuilding prep. Got over that. Did a little bit of training at home in the garage. Did a little bit of active rest, and then got back to it. And then won a few classes at my bodybuilding show. So I lived through 2020 and 2021 like kind of the average person. Had some restrictions, got COVID, got the vaccines now. So Yahoo, it's been an interesting time. Did you get COVID, or did you get vaccinated, or what did you get?
I had COVID. What was interesting, what I was just going to mention on there, I mean, especially being able to still get the training in and go on do your bodybuilding show. Doing the rows, it's one of those things where usually you would use machines. I think it's strange that different things have been highlighted, such as like training with a mask, because in the gyms over in the UK, it's not mandatory to wear masks.
Mm-hmm.
A few people have who have come in and trained, but as staff, I've not had to wear them in the in the gym. So that's another element you have to take into account. At the powerlifting competition, though, when you were lifting, you didn't have to wear them, but in the warm-up rooms, when you were on the platform, you didn't have to wear them, but in the warm-up rooms, you had to wear them as well. So there's a few sort of, what I've found is a few different dynamics that have changed. That, like what you mentioned about doing a lot more bent over rows than machines because you're training at home. There's a few things that have cropped up which in the past have never been an issue. It'd just be a case of, oh well, I'm not doing bent over rows, I'm going to do a chest supported row or whatever it may be. So I think over the last year or so, I just think everyone's had to adapt and change and improvise, because of how much disruption it's caused.
100%, and it hasn't been fun, but we all got to live through something. So here we are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's on the downward curve now. I think things are, getting back to some sort of normality. And the fact that people have still been able to train has been pretty good. That kind of flows quite nicely into the sort of first couple of questions that I wanted to chat about, which was efficiency in terms of dieting. We'll touch on training, which I know we've spoken a little bit about there, your own training. But in terms of diet, there's so many different diets out there, keto and all the different types of diets that people have tried in the past. Whereas the ultimate goal is either to build muscle, lose fat, get in shape, and whatever it may be. When it comes to being efficient with your diet, what does that mean to you, and how do you work, speak about that to your clients?
Yeah, huge factor in efficiency. Great question, by the way. Huge factor in efficiency is two factors I can think of off the top of my head. One is, how much does that person know about how to make a diet, how to cook food, how to, like you tell them 50 grams of protein, go. What's their initial reaction? If their initial reaction is like, I'm not really sure what protein is, there's always a certain, in order to make an efficient diet for them, you're going to have to make that diet very low scope as far as how technical it gets, right? Because they just don't know a whole lot. So you'll have to go really, really basic with them. And the second factor of how efficient a diet can be is the difficulty of the goals that the diet is trying to achieve. And if your goal is to lose 5 kilos to get in shape for summer, you can put a minimal amount of effort in just the very, very rough basics of dieting, and you're going to get what you're going to get. But if your goal is to step on stage as a competitive pro bodybuilder and, take 3 or 4 extra higher placings than normal, efficiency really starts to give way to optimality and maximum approach. It's almost like the difference between, what kind of car do I need to get to the store to buy, can of soda versus I'm trying to be the all-time top 5 racers on this racetrack. Very different cars, very different cars, very different way of driving them. So I think for efficiency, I'll give you 2 examples at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Efficiency in dieting at the very low end of the spectrum of difficulty and of knowledge of the client, I would say, is designing a diet that gives a person 5 or 6 easy choices of lean protein sources, 5 or 6 easy choices of veggies, 5 or 6 easy choices of whole grains and fruits, and the same for healthy fats. And then you tell them, look, it's like a little combination. You just pick one of each category, whatever you think tastes great at the time, or whatever's easy. Here are some very rough guidelines as to how to eyeball these things. Like, look at the size of your fist or something. That's how much meat you want on the plate, etc. You go and you tell them no more soda unless it's diet, no junk, no ice cream, no crisps, nothing. And then they just do that basic diet where it's a basic, super healthy thing. You say to eat 4 meals a day. All of them should look pretty similar. Here's how much of each food I want you to have. Geez, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how to do that. They can know almost nothing and still do it they could be putting some lean meat on their plate, and someone at their family's like, so why beef and not lean pork? And they go, I don't know. I have no idea. My coach told me to do this. I don't know anything about dieting. Like, it's like if you have a certain kind of exhaust pipe on your car and someone's like, hey, like, you using this kind of exhaust pipe? You're like, I don't know. If it gets the gas out, it's good enough for me. I'm not a mechanic. So with that kind of diet, I mean, you can make radical transformation very, very rapidly with almost no intellectual oversight whatsoever. It's a simple plan. It works really well. Now, is that going to put you on a competitive bodybuilding stage? Of course not. But is it going to let you lose 5, 7.5, 10 kilos before the summer starts, before the Christmas holidays begin? Yeah, of course. So that's one kind of efficiency where the amount of input required is very low. But then, on the other end, if you really want to make a big run at competitive lifting, competitive bodybuilding, etc., efficiency is more a matter of getting a meal prep dialed in to where you're batch cooking, you're using Tupperware, you're putting everything, exactly the right macros all in place. You either have reminders on your phone, or you're so ingrained with the lifestyle that you know exactly when to eat your meals, and you just turn it into a very machine-like enterprise. If it's your macros is really great, I would say it's actually in the middle of those two somewhere. But at the end of the day, if you want very serious things to happen, you have to be very machine-like. And then the efficiency is developed from the standardization of things and the fact that every time you look in your fridge every morning from the night before, you have your entire day's meals already pre-sorted in Tupperware. You just go right to it, open up the Tupperware, eat, put it away into the dishwasher, move on. And that, is it efficient on the net balance? No, you could be doing it way simpler, but it's the most efficiency you can get while trying to reach an exotic goal.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that's where sometimes, from a client's point of view, that they sometimes go wrong, that they see, bodybuilders or strongmen or powerlifters, whoever it is, and see the diets that they do and try and replicate those and think, oh, well, they must be doing it, so that must work, rather than meeting the diet where they're at? And then on the flip side of that, from the coach's point of view, do you think that, where coaches sometimes go wrong, it's they try and implement diets onto their clients that work for them rather than meeting the client where they're at?
All the time. And it is just as comical as if, you wanted to buy a car and you're like, well, what does my favorite race car driver drive? I'll just get that. Wait a minute. Why are you buying a race car? You don't need to race. And I think it causes a lot of just wasted effort and grief and failed diets. So for example, I'm currently prepping for a bodybuilding show. So one of my parts of my diets is exactly the number of almonds in my evening meals, counted to the almond. It's 40 almonds or 20 almonds, depending on the day. It's not 21, it's not 19. And, if someone had to do that diet as a regular person, it would be just needlessly stupid and painful. And you just tell them, look, grab a small handful of almonds. And they say, what's a small handful? And you give them the stink eye, and you know what a fucking small handful is. Don't take a big handful. They're like, you're right. So you just do that, and then they're good to go. They'll lose tons of weight and get in great shape. I'll tell you this, if someone's coming from a regular, normal British or American diet full of junk, if you get them to eat 4 meals of lean proteins, whole grains, veggies, and a bit of healthy fats, they're just going to have incredible results just doing that, counting and measuring nothing, because they don't need to. And a lot of times that simplicity is what really allows them to get through the diet, because someone could say to them, oh man, it's October, time to start Christmas shopping soon. I heard you're dieting. That's got to be really hard on top of that. They honestly go, it's not that hard. Every restaurant I go to, every grocery store I go to, every even like petrol station I go to, it's just not that hard to find a handful of lean protein. And my coach said, if I'm hungry and I can't find any of that, a protein bar works. Just one protein bar works just fine. I mean, that is so effective and so easy to do. You have to try to get out of your way to not do it. Whereas if you tell someone, and unfortunately, as to your question, this happens all the time. People hire basically prep coaches for regular diets. They're like, I want to shed, 15 pounds by Thanksgiving, or, whatever the or equivalent, late, the Christmas holidays in the UK. I want to shed, 10 kilos, 7 kilos by then. And they get this diet of like 300 grams of carbs from potato. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, am I going to just live at home now? And like, am I a machine? And then they get it wrong and they freak out because, oh my God, I didn't have the 300 grams of potatoes. I did oatmeal. Is that bad? And sometimes the coach says, well, yeah, it's bad because I said potatoes. And it's like, oh my God, that doesn't matter for anything. Maybe for the last 3 days of carb up in bodybuilding or something. and they get over carried away with the details. So, when your goals are pretty basic, the basics work incredibly well. And I think some people, maybe many people, overvalue the power and precision of dieting and undervalue the ease and adherence of it. If I just wanted to get in shape for the summer or the winter, then I'm just going to do the minimum amount of effort it takes to get in shape, which is actually just very little effort at all. If I wanted super precision and I wanted to step on stage in a bodybuilding show, yeah, I'd start counting stuff down to the gram. But I think people have this erroneous belief that the reason their compatriots, their fellow people around them aren't in shape is because they lack precision. Bullshit. Precision at what? They're not even trying to do anything. In order to be precise in an endeavor, you have to try. I'm sure you've been around the gym and the office, and for some reason I have this very clear British woman's voice that's voicing this concern. I'm not going to do my absurdly offensive British impression, but she'd come around to your desk and she'd say, "Oh, you're dieting, I see." And you're like, "Yep." And she's like, "I've been trying to do that." Like, "No, you haven't. No, you haven't. Get out of here." You just feel a little guilty when you eat junk food. That's not dieting. So it turns out dieting is actually not that difficult for most people, but people have this idea of like, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right. And then instead of buying the go-kart or the regular car, they try to buy the race car. And then it turns out race cars are hard to drive. As a matter of fact, standard race car, most people can't drive. From what I'm aware, there's just to make this analogy really, really clear, I think the standard Formula car, if I'm not mistaken, you actually have one foot on the gas and then one foot on the brake, like, or ready to step on the brake at all times. That's not how you drive a normal car. It's very difficult to drive one of those. You need like months and months of training to become competent at it. Why would you do that to yourself just to go from point A to point B? And I think that's a really big misconception.
Yeah, definitely. I was really hoping you were going to do a British woman's accent then. I thought you were going to bust out an impersonation then. No, I think
you can always do that per request if you're really interested.
That's it. Viewings have just got, downloads have just gone up now. With what you mentioned there, I think the key thing is that people get bogged down with the details rather than, like what you mentioned, the basics. The big rocks. Get some protein in, get some veg in. I think people are always looking for this. Oh, what does that person do? What's the secret formula? Whereas actually, going back to the basics, like yourself, your diet will change prepping for a bodybuilding show, but you've still got that foundation of having protein, having veg in there, and like you say, it's not that hard to go, even when, rather than having a pack of protein compared to a protein bar, there's always alternatives and there's always a choice rather than, oh my God, there's no chicken. What do I do? Right. Well, what's the next best thing that you can have from there? It's not the end of the world. Yep. Just building off from that, because sometimes you do see people or, advertisements for like, not a crash diet, but these, try this magic formula and this is going to work. And it does get results, but then you see people, maybe rebound off that. What do you think is the, rather than when clients are looking at, right, this is going to be a long-lasting habit change in terms of having protein and veg, rather than gravitating towards those quick fixes where they are going to see results, but they're not long-lasting results, if that kind of makes sense.
Oh, totally. Instead of a diet building the foundation of continued healthy eating for someone, it's just this really weird formula of very specific foods that there's no gray area, there's no shading out of, there's no spectrum. Like either you do this exact thing or you're cheating and you're wrong and you're dumb and you're bad and you're going to get fat. Like, okay, so I'm on the diet, but I'm off the diet. I'm just free and clear in the world and nothing applies remotely like it does. So for example, if you teach someone to construct meals out of just a handful of lean protein, some veggies, some healthy carbs, and a small amount of healthy fats, you tell them, look, this is how all your meals should look from now until the day you die. And if you want to throw in some junk, totally, then throw it in, add it on top. If you want to go off plan and eat some meal that doesn't meet any of those categories, like 4 or 5 slices of pizza, you totally can. But then the meal after that, go back to this way of eating. And the thing is, this way of eating, I mean, you can imagine getting invited to the average dinner party somewhere in England. They're going to feed you something that looks like this. It's very difficult to go to a lunch or a dinner or even a breakfast and not have some kind of lean or protein source some kind of vegetable, some kind of grain. I mean, this is universal food that appears in basically almost all cultures. So you have to go out of your way to not find this kind of food. Because you know how to eat well now, you can say, okay, I can usually eat my meals just the same way I've been on the diet when I come off, but I can put in a bit more fats and a bit more, like sauces and maybe some ice cream or cookies after the meal. But then generally, if I find myself to be floating back up in body fat and I don't like what I see, I can lock it down for a few weeks and just stick to the basics of lean meats, whole grains, veggies, and healthy fats. And then I'm just going to slide right back in. So it's kind of a turn dial you have for yourself. Generally, you have these great eating habits that work all the time. There's no on the diet or off the diet. There's actually the opposite of how much junk are you adding in extra. You take away the junk, you add in more junk, and then you sort of have a turn dial to dial away from pleasure with food all the way down to pleasure with how your body, looks based on how you want. Whereas if you have, let's say, an extreme carnivore or keto diet, that's the diet. And then you're not going to be on that forever, because for the love of God, who the hell avoids all plants and fats? Some of the tastiest foods in the world are based on that. Then when you're eating plants and fats, it's not like you're like turning the dial away from carnivore. It's completely different. And then what do? Just go back into sprints of dieting and sprints of not? You don't learn any habits. There's no way for you, because, there's not just these two states of either I'm on the diet or I'm eating Cheetos, with cheese melted on top of them, with sugar on top. Like it's not just either super cheating or super dieting. You can have really high quality, tasty foods that are quote unquote diet foods most of the time. Like a good solid cut of meat, some really tasty veggies, some wild rice flavored really well. Gee, that's a meal most people can eat kind of all the time. It's not like no one's going to come up to you if you're eating that at work and go, oh, I see you're on a diet. They're going to be like, oh, that looks really good and it's healthy. Oh my God, you're doing so great. That's the kind of middle of the road stuff that you learn if you diet properly. But if you diet using weird fads, you're never going to build that skill set. And then someone's like, hey, construct a healthy meal for me that's not you trying to lose fat, just to live. And they're going to go, I actually don't know how to do that. I either know how to diet intentionally to try to get as lean as possible, or I know how to just live like a wild animal eating garbage. And that's it. There's only two modes, and that's not very useful.
Yeah. I think the two things that jumped out to me there, you said learn and skill set. And I think, that's really important in terms of it makes it a little bit easier to stick to if you're enjoying the food, because especially with like social, you mentioned there about going to a dinner party, social engagements, birthdays, Christmas. A lot of these events are, surrounded by food. Food is a main element of that, and food's there to be enjoyed. Yes, it's fuel for workouts and recovery and all those sort of things, but you've got to enjoy what you're eating. No one wants to eat, bland, tasteless food. And do you think, when just flipping over to the coaching side, do you think that's where, there's that mindset of telling people what to eat rather than how to eat is a better approach to coaching nutrition and dieting for that matter?
Generally it is. It requires a little bit more investment. It turns the coach into a teacher. So it depends on the kind of engagement you have someone. Like, so if someone, let's say, contacted me and said, hey, listen, I coach an athlete in the sport of sprinting, and the Olympics are coming up. I guess the Olympics are now over. But in any case, let's say it's the national championships are coming up. This person needs to drop 2.5 kilos of pure body fat. And they will do anything it takes to get the gold medal. They're very close to it already. The top ranked sprinter in the UK. Can you just give us a diet to follow that guarantees this is going to happen? I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah. I'll tell them exactly what to eat. And they're not going to learn a goddamn thing. I mean, they could try to intuit some things, but they may intuit the wrong things. Because, 4 weeks later, they're down 2.5 kilos. They're holding the gold medal in their hands, and they're back to just being a normal person. The thing is, most sprinters don't have a health or body weight problem. They didn't need my diet advice to set them up for the long term. They just needed an exact diet of what to eat. So that's totally fine. Whereas a lot of clients are not, UK top ranked sprinters. Most of your clients are people who, they come to you because they do want to shed some fat. They do want to build some muscle. And these are some things that they kind of want to keep around, being a little leaner, being a little more muscular. And the reason they came to you in the first place, they have no idea what they're doing, even at baseline. But the baseline intake is not healthy. It's not a well-rounded diet. So if you're coaching them and you give them an exact specific diet to really just regimentally follow, and they do it and they learn nothing, you'll get them in shape temporarily, but it's a dog shit product you're selling them, because then they won't be able to maintain that shape and they'll just get out of shape again. But if you take a little bit of time to teach them how to eat, mostly by example of them practicing it and then opening up their mind a little bit along the way, then you leave them with a really awesome skill set that they can now maintain their results so well. Like a ton of people that have dieted with my company, Renaissance Periodization, through our methods, they like use us once or twice and then we never see them again. Why? Because they're just in shape the rest of their lives. And they still stay engaged a lot of times on social media. They share the diet with other people, but they don't ever really go through another fat loss phase on purpose. And even if they do, they already know how to do it. They don't have to pay us for anything because we taught them how to eat, which is, I think, a really, really great thing. And basically, here's how you do it. You sort of lay out the healthy meals they're supposed to eat, and you can give them a few choices. Here are some choices of lean meats, whole grains, veggies, just to make sure that they're not like brain exploded all over the place, really worried about making the right choice. If you say, look, you can choose any vegetable you want, a lot of times that, to me, infinity and zero have a lot of mathematical properties in common. So they're like, what do I choose then? I don't know. You might as well have told me nothing. So if you give them 5 or 6 options in each one, for the first few weeks, they do that. And then they say, hey, listen, like, so shrimp isn't on the diet. Can I have shrimp? And you go, of course. And they go, really? And a couple weeks later, like, what about salmon? You're like, yep, salmon's great. And they're like, whoa, what's the trick here? And you go, here's the thing. Any lean protein is good enough. And you tell them a little bit more about what a lean protein is. And they're like, oh my God, that's incredible. And they're like, yeah, you don't even need to check with me. You can just eat whatever lean proteins you want. They do the same thing with veggies, grains, healthy fats. At the end of the diet, they're like, I know how to build a meal. It's like Neo in the Matrix. They see the Matrix. They're like, I know how to build healthy meals. Yep, that's it. You know the rest. And now they've noticed that as you have dieted them further down, you've reduced their carbs and fats slightly. And you tell them, look, if you think you're a little heavier than you want to be, reduce your carbs and fats a little bit. Definitely stop eating a ton of junk. And then if you are good to go and you want to enjoy your life, put a little more carbs and fats in your meals, same meals you already know how to build. And then in addition to that, have some junk on top. You let that, and you give that person a little bit of some exit material, some reading materials, talk to them on the phone a little bit before they finish the dieting process with you for their fat loss goal. And after that, you might have to contact them a few times just to get them on course, but they really know how to run their own diet in any circumstance. Like tons of RP clients in the RP clients Facebook group, they'll share stories like, I used to go to these conferences for my job and I was just no idea what to eat and I panic. Now I'm like a laser machine, like a robot cyborg that finds healthy fats and lean proteins. And I have my own protein bars they bring with me just in case it's a shit offering at the conference. And I know what I'm doing. And people ask me questions like, oh my God, how do you know what you're doing? I'm like, well, I did RP and I actually learned how to do it. So that kind of thing is, teach a man to fish versus give a man a fish sort of thing. I think it helps. Now, to tell you right now, I'm waving our own RP flag here, but some people don't want that. Some people don't want to learn anything. They just want the diet and they want to fuck off and do whatever after. And you have to respect the client's wishes. Sometimes they don't want to be taught. Then you'll probably see them a few more times, or they'll go to some other company or coach because then they get out of shape again. Some people aren't interested in learning, and some people just don't care, even if they do know. So it takes all kinds, but I think the learning approach really does for many people, especially, I'll put it this way, for the people that want it, it works out incredibly well. And sometimes people don't want it. And as a coach, you'll understand pretty quickly that they don't want any more insight of the eat this now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think learning, and education and, enhancing the client's skill set is really important. And I'm glad you mentioned there about, give a man a fish or, teach him how to fish. I think sometimes, because that was the quote that came to my head actually when you were explaining that and, giving that answer. Because I think sometimes, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but some coaches are maybe sometimes a little bit worried to give their clients, the skill set and tools and educate them so they can actually do things, for themselves, because ultimately, they might end up leaving. But then again, you've got to think about, right, what's the next progression? So they've done the fat loss phase. What's the next progression? How are you going to then progress them further or, help them to reach the next goals? Once they've lose fat, they might want to get stronger. They might want to do whatever else rather than, because, I always use the analogy, especially, with interns that come into the gym. It's a little bit like at some point, it's like you don't stay at school forever. At some point you graduate, right. And that's the same, as in training as nutrition.
Yes. Now, I know some coaches will hear this and think, well, how the fuck am I supposed to make money if I graduate all my clients? And there's a really, really easy answer here. That's maybe the best news you'll hear all day if you're concerned about this. this. The number one advertisement of your services to others and the impetus for them to buy your services is client happiness success stories, especially from that client's mouth. We just did some market research. We're finishing up here at RP. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be talking about this. It's all top secret shit, but I'll just share this. It's a no-brainer. We found that by far the vast majority of how RP business occurs is through people's references. Like when you get Charisse at the gym in shape and she loses 15 kilos and gets in incredible shape, she goes to the office and listen, if she gets in shape for 5 weeks and then 5 weeks later she's back to her old dumpy self, you got 5 weeks of people asking Charisse, what did she do to get in shape? And 5 weeks of unbelievable volume of referrals. Now, not everyone who she says, oh, it's RP, this great thing. Oh, I've been working with Steve Cuthbert and he's really, he got me in shape. Here's his card or here's his Instagram, contact him. He's going to get you in amazing shape. But a certain fraction will, and you'll get some clients. And here's the thing. What if Charisse stays in shape for the next 5 years and she doesn't even talk to you anymore? She's not your client because she knows what she's doing. Well, listen, do you think she wants to be a professional coach? No, she has a job as like whatever, court stenographer or some shit. She has her own job. She has a career. She has children, a family. And honestly, she'd get kind of tired of people asking her how to do. She loves the compliments, but they're like, okay, so what do I have to eat? And she'll go, hey, listen, check this out. My old coach, my personal trainer, you got to see him because he's the guy that did this and he'll answer all your questions. I mean, you literally just designed a lead magnet from a marketing perspective. This ultra powerful, like if you graduate, 20 clients a year, that's 20 people out in the wild that are in quote unquote forever good shape. If they never come back, right? If they get out of shape, they'll come back to you. You get to make money off of them. Yay, slow clap. If they always stay in good shape, they're forever advertising for you because the clients, when you get them in good shape, they're endlessly thankful for it. And they don't even know how well you compare to any other coach. They may have never tried another coach, but they know you're the fucking man. They know you're amazing. They'll sing your praises for forever and they'll get you. I'm certain there are former clients of RP that have gotten us 50 to 100 people by themselves to pay us money. Super spreaders, to use the COVID term. No, but seriously, it's a thing. So don't you ever worry about graduating clients, because if you successfully graduate them as success stories, imagine this. I'll make the stupidest analogy I probably ever made on a podcast. Let's go into the Harry Potter fiction universe and say, okay, Harry Potter becomes the greatest magician of all time. Do you want him to stay at Hogwarts? What the fuck? He's like 30. He's not going to stay at Hogwarts. That's awkward, right? And also, you have nothing left to teach him. So, yeah, okay, he pays his fees to stay at Hogwarts and you get to make money. You get to run the school. But how about this? Harry Potter goes around the universe accomplishing magic feats. And every now and again, people are like, where did he learn to do this? And everyone's like, Hogwarts. And like, oh my God, I'm going to go sign up. And all of a sudden, you can charge $1 trillion an hour for people go to study at Hogwarts because fucking Harry Potter's from Hogwarts. You want successful clients to be free and to be on their own and to be independent because they're gigantic attractors for business for you. And at the end of the day, listen, what's the ideal route to the fitness industry? We all succeed to get everyone in shape forever and no one ever needs their services again. I would gladly change my career path if we literally solved the fitness problem in the world. Now, do you think that's likely to happen? Of course, it's not likely to happen. We don't ever have to worry about business unless the pharmaceutical industry solves obesity with one pill, because people have no trouble getting back out of shape. And new people age into the market all the time, and they age into being fatter and out of shape. And don't you worry, there's plenty of business to go around. So that whole hanging on to clients thing is icky. It's ethically kind of weird, and it's completely backwards from a business perspective.
Yeah. Actually, just thinking about that, I've actually had a client. I've coached her for the last 4 years, and actually, she's like, "Yeah, I still like a program, but I think I've learned enough." And it's kind of like a part of me was sad, but also on the flip side, I was like, "Oh, cool!" Like, she's at that position now where she feels comfortable enough to, go off by herself. I felt like a mother bird just being like, "Yeah, fly away." But that's what it is. And actually, it's a good way that you've mentioned that. That's free marketing. I know people spend loads on social media campaigns and all this other stuff. But it's actually getting people in shape. That's your free marketing for you and referrals, which is only going to be of benefit. Now flipping it over to, we've spoken about the nutrition side of things. Kind of wanted to touch on the training side of things as well, since we rounded off the nutrition part. And it's kind of the same again. There's the big rocks and the basics that comes with the nutrition. but also in terms of training, because, you know, there's always things, oh, if you do this little trick, you know, you're going to get bigger arms by having like a little bit of twist when you do this exercise, or being efficient in terms of, you know, the training that you're doing. Because, you know, there's, especially more so on the training side of things, I think there's sometimes a mentality of, right, well, I just need to do more, but that more isn't necessarily getting closer towards your goals. It's just wasting time on things that could be spent in other areas. What are kind of your thoughts and experiences with that, if that kind of makes sense?
Yeah, it's a mirror image of the dieting discussion. There's two ends of the spectrum. One is people just trying to get in basic shape, and another one is people trying to earn, IFBB Pro cards. If you want training for someone who's trying to get an IFBB Pro card, it's going to be very meticulous, very data intensive, very specific, even down to the lifts and the techniques. They use them to say, hey, look, when I do Smith machine benches with a closer grip, my elbows hurt. Just a slightly wider grip and they feel fine. That kind of detail matters if you're trying to get a pro card in a big, big way. Because if your elbows hurt now, when you're dieted down to the bone and dry as hell, they're going to fall off your body if you don't fix this now. So all these different particulars, people have different needs. Someone might have a really big, teres major and upper traps, but their lats might not be that big. So just more pulling isn't the answer. Specific kind of pulling, vertical pulling, lat isolation, all the complexity is there. But then on the simple side of things, what do you need to do to get someone in shape in the gym? Let's just put cardio aside for a second. That's even simpler. But, compound barbell and dumbbell and machine movements that have a large amplitude, cover a lot of muscle, like, deadlifts and presses and squats and pulls and, pull-ups and things like that, various pushing. And if you just build a very basic program covering all the muscles of the body, you can train 2 or 3 days a week for 45 minutes at a time and get excellent results from a basic growth and hypertrophy and strength and health aspect, to where if you move through a full range of motion, a lot of joint and connective tissue issues go away right away, because the reason they were around is because you weren't moving your body how it was naturally sort of evolved to be moved. If you sit in a chair all day, your back might give you problems. If you start doing full range of motion deadlifts, stiff-legged deadlifts and squats, all of a sudden you're moving those muscles. They're getting a ton of almost rehab because they're moving, and that really starts to get them healing and limber and flexible again. And the client is off to a great start. If you teach them very good technique, you teach them how to monitor their own performance and soreness and recovery, and you teach them how to keep an eye on which exercises hurt the joints versus the muscles, then after a few months, a few years with you, they can make very, very good programming on their own. You teach them how to deload and how to understand when they're overreached, and it's not rocket science. And then all of a sudden, they know really good technique and they can write their own programs, and all is well. And some people, like we talked about in the nutrition thing, they'll never want that. They'll always want a coach, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's definitely better than hiring someone for a short amount of time to do this incredibly complex training. Nothing is ever explained to them. When they try to put their own program together, they might just sit there with a pencil and a piece of paper and write nothing down because they don't realize they don't know anything. Or they might just kind of repeat the same program. I have a funny story about this. Across universities in the United States, freshmen at the university had just finished their last year of high school. And it's something that happens in almost every university that I've ever been to across the United States, is in the first several weeks, even in the whole first semester of training, especially the first several weeks, you'll see people coming in doing the same programs they did in high school. And because a lot of people do high school athletics in the United States, you'll see a lot of power cleans and hang cleans because they're used for football to make you more powerful. They're great for that. But you're done playing American football unless you're a scholarship athlete, which is like 1 in 1,000 people. None of these people, they're training in a recreational facility provided by the gym. They're not competitive football players anymore. All they want to do is get jacked and lean so they can have more sex with people. And they're doing power cleans, which have a stimulus to fatigue ratio of absolute dog shit for bodybuilding. And they're still doing them because they just don't know any better. And I don't mean that as an insult. They literally just don't know that there are better ways to do things because nobody ever taught them. All they did was did the workout that their coach said. And then they come to the university and they're like, I want to get jacked and lean. They go, just keep doing power cleans and squats and max benches and box jumps and all this other football training because they just don't know. And if they learned a few things, they could build their own programs, no problem. But unfortunately, they just don't have that. And the other unfortunate thing is a lot of them don't even have good technique in any of those things because the coach never bothered to teach that. You can get stronger, more powerful, more explosive with bad technique. It just comes at a slightly higher injury risk. But over time, their technique is so bad that the injury risk multiplies. and they end up getting hurt a lot. And it turns out no one's ever taught them how to lift weights. So a lot of times those basic fundamentals really carry their weight for the long term if that person is dedicated to trying to program on their own, or at least understand the process.
Yeah, I think that was a good explanation there, because I know on the nutrition side of things we mentioned about there's quite a lot of wide variety of diets and people are looking at different things, which can make it confusing rather than just, actually protein and veg, is going to be a good staple going forward. Whereas with the training side of things, I think that people have an understanding that they need to, squat, bench, have a big or squat, deadlift, have some upper body movements in there, but don't necessarily know how to do them. And then it is that case of, I've had it before where people have got squats in there, but because I'm just focusing on technique, I don't want to go heavy enough, or I don't want to change anything around. And then the rest of the session is loads of other exercises that they know how to do, but isn't going to get them where they want to be. And it's just bulking out their workouts with fluff that isn't going to be as efficient. A couple of things spoken about there, a couple of topics, nutrition, and we touched on the training side of things. But from everything that we've chatted about there, what would be the last question that I like to ask is, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
Well, number one is know what you want as a client and as a coach. If you want people to become independent and have a skill set that makes your coaching of them easier, because here's something we didn't mention. If your clients don't know what lean meats and veggies are after a 3-month diet, the next 3-month diet they sign up for is going to be the same painful, you having to tell them what to do and them being confused all the time. I had a client once back in the day, she would text me pictures of food labels and with just one question, can I eat this? And I was like, okay, we need to teach this young lady how to actually understand nutrition a little bit. So I was like, any green veggie is totally fine to eat, and here's why. She never texted me that again. So a lot of times, know what you want as a client or as a coach, and see if you need something for the long term. And if you do, you have to understand, or as a coach, teach the fundamentals behind it. It's not that hard. It takes just a little bit of extra effort. But on the back end of that understanding, you're going to be able to really do your own job designing really good things. To me, it's been funny. I've had some older clients make programs or make diets themselves once I was done working with them, and they'll message me and say, hey, I know this is bad, but can I send you my program? Can you tell me if I really fucked up? 9 times out of 10, I'm like, this is great. And they're like, it is? I thought it was awful. I'm like, well, look, you got lean meats, you got veggies, you got this and that, and you're good to go. And they're like, wow, I really know what I'm doing. And they really do. So, if a person is interested in long-term success, learning the basics is not that hard. And look, if you're struggling or if you get really confused, you can hire your coach again, and that's totally fine. But in many cases, it's the basics that really, really work. So if you are sitting at home right now and you're listening to this, you can ask yourself as a coach or as a personal trainer, do my clients know the basics of dieting and training? / are they on their way to knowing them? And if the answer is definitely a no, they have no idea what the fuck is going on, ask yourself if they would be interested in knowing it, or at least having the utility of knowing it. And if the answer is yes, you should start to teach them a little more versus just tell them what to do.
Absolutely. I think that was a really good, roundup of everything that we've chatted about there. And I think the key thing for me is, the more effort you put in, it might take a little bit more extra effort, but the results at the end of it, the outcome of it, is only going to benefit you as a coach and as well as a client. Thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me, Mike. I've enjoyed the previous 2 episodes that we chatted about, and I know I follow your, content and information that you put out there, and I feel lucky that, you've been able to jump on the podcast the couple of times that you've been on. But for everyone listening who might have any questions about what we've chatted about today, want to see the content information you put out there, see the YouTube, or even work with yourself or RP, where can people find you or reach out to you?
Yeah, so reaching out to me is a little tough nowadays. I live in a bunker all by myself, and I just grow my fingernails and hair really long and work on computer programs. I'm mostly kidding. Some of that's true. But you can reach out RP anytime by going on renaissanceperiodization.com. There's a 24-hour customer service help desk. Ask any question you like, including, hey, how do I get a coach? Or say, hey, I want to learn more about nutrition. Do you guys have any resources? And they'll link you some of the books that we have. You can go on YouTube, Renaissance Periodization on YouTube, or just type Mike Israetel or Dr. Mike training on YouTube, and it'll come up with the channel. Tons of new content all the time. Tons of playlist videos of like how to design a diet, how to design a training program. These are literally playlists we've made. Each video is 10 to 20 minutes long, 10 videos per playlist, and it really just teaches you how to do this stuff. Tons of other resources. If you get to the YouTube, there'll be links to everything else. If you find me on Instagram, RPDRMIKE on Instagram, or Dr. Mike, better yet, at RP Strength on Instagram is Renaissance Periodization. Tons of followers, tons of great content. If you want to learn, we have so much free knowledge, it'll take you the rest of your life to get through it all. So come on down.
Awesome. If you haven't, for everyone listening, if you haven't listened to the 2 previous episodes with Mike, check those out. And if you haven't, if you've been living under a rock and haven't looked at any of the RP content out there, 100% go and check it out. So thanks a lot, Mike, for taking the time to jump on. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.